Hi everyone, thank you for joining our Back to School series via Facebook. My name is Nadia and I'm a health promoter with Niagara Region Public Health. Today we will be discussing cyber safety and crime with our special guest, Constable Jay from the Niagara Regional Police Service. Before we begin, we would like to give a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we are hosting this event is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to work here today. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon wampum and the Two-Row Wampum agreements that between these two agreements establish relationships between nations of harmonious coexistence based on respect, kindness, and acceptance and stewardship of the land and resources to ensure that all people benefit and thrive. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living in Niagara is directly related to the resources and friendships of the Indigenous peoples. Now, as we start into our presentation, here are a few reminders. Feel free to put any questions that you have into the chat box for our presenter. This presentation will be recorded and saved on the Niagara Parents Facebook page and YouTube channel in case you missed it or you want to rewatch it later on. If we were unable to answer any questions during today's presentation, please reach out to us via Facebook Messenger or through our live chat, phone, or email, and we will connect you to the right resources. The resources that are mentioned today will be linked in the comment section below. And lastly, but most importantly, today we will be discussing and talking about cyber safety and crime with our guest. And our speaker will be sharing experiences from their field of work that may be triggering for some of our viewers. If support is needed, please reach out to the Niagara Crisis Line at 1-866-550-5205 or Niagara Parents. So today we will jump into this presentation. We have Constable Jay. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. If you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your background and the work that you currently do with the Community-Oriented Response and Engagement Unit.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me today. A little bit of background about me is, so I've worked for the Niagara Regional Police Service for the last 12 years. Approximately the last 5 years of that, I spent in the local high schools in Niagara Falls. I was a school resource officer there. Also assisted elementary schools in any way that I could. Currently been transitioned now over to the Community-Oriented Response and Engagement, also known as the CORE unit. It's much easier to say CORE unit than that's a bit of a mouthful, right? So that unit consists of multiple officers engaging in the community. We kind of got a little back to a little bit of our old roots of walking the beat in the downtown sectors like Niagara. So I work in Niagara Falls, so Clifton Hill, Queen Street, Victoria Avenue, Stanley Avenue, Lundy's Lane, that kind of thing. We spend a great deal of time building relationships with community partners, stakeholders, local business owners, for example, and just how can we help them do a better job. There's a big homelessness issue within every community, especially like Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, the bigger cities, right, of course. And then any other way we can help officers on the road, we definitely step in and do that. There's also a big youth component to it, which is very important to us to maintain that relationship with the youth in our community. They are the future of our community, so we want to maintain that and support them and be there as a resource for them and educate them in any way that we can. Moving forward, I think it's also important for the viewers to know a little bit about my personal side of me is, this isn't, I always tell people, my line when I worked in the schools, I always told people, because they see a police officer and they see the uniform, and I always tell people, like, this is not who I am, it's what I do. Although it's a profession and very important. Outside of my job, I have no issue saying it. I'm married, and I have a son who's now just recently finished high school. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today allows me to reflect both on a personal side of things, having the experience as a school resource officer, and being a father. So.
Thanks for sharing. So we had conversations previous to this event, and you mentioned a lot of the real world examples of children using the internet unsafely, and it was very shocking to myself and my colleagues to find out how young kids are when they get exposed to these dangers. So at what age are you seeing kids who are impacted by online dangers now?
So, this is something that happens on a daily basis. I think interviewers and everyone can probably agree that this is the world that they all live in, right? So this is where a lot of their focus and attention goes. Having worked in the schools for 5 years, high schools, obviously in the teenage side of it, it's very prevalent. Like they've already been exposed and introduced to the cell phones, the iPads, all the different games, apps, whatever. But more and more, and probably the last 3 years as a school resource officer, we're getting calls constantly about the misuse, inappropriate use of cell phones in the elementary level. And one example that always sticks out for me and really puts things into perspective on how young kids are being exposed to it. About probably a year and a half ago, during COVID, I got a call from a principal from an elementary school in Niagara Falls, and very concerned. They ended up finding out that a girl in grade 3, so what are we looking at, 7, 8 years old, had somehow managed to take an inappropriate photo of herself and post it online. So for obvious reasons, that's lots of red flags and causes a lot of concern. So I was called to the school, stepped in, and we got the parents involved. We got all the resources at the school involved. Did our best to try to figure out how that happened. And the parents were completely oblivious to the fact that she had access to that. But they figured out at a young age, right? So it happens at all ages, and unfortunately, to answer your question, it's happening even at a younger age all the time, which is more a reason why we got to give it the attention it needs to be there for them.
So, talking about these young ages, at what age would you suggest that parents start that conversation with their children around cyber safety?
So I would say that earlier the better. The earlier you can lay the ground rules and lay some structure and put up those barriers and explain to them the dangers or the advantages and disadvantages of it. Let's be honest, having cell phones and iPads and playing games and all the different apps and the internet is a wonderful tool. But at a young age, they don't understand the dangers of it. And it can be from a personal side to it, to eventually to where it could lead to possible criminal, where police get involved, right?
Wow. So what are some good ways to talk to your kids about internet safety and the consequences of their decision? I know you would have to adapt it, based on their age, but how would you suggest those conversations be?
I think, and again, I'll speak from my own personal experience, I believe that sit down with your children and try to come up with some sort of a plan together, right? I'll be the first one to say that, when my son would give him a cell phone and he would misuse it or he wouldn't give it to me, anxiety go through the roof, that's kind of mine. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but he just wouldn't want to give me the device. Take the time to explain to them the advantages and the disadvantages, like I said earlier, but maybe come to formulate a plan with them.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you totally, disrespected your mom and I, and we're taking your phone, I'm taking your video games, I'm taking the internet away from you, you're grounded on top of that. Didn't work out well. No one teaches us how to be parents. We're all learning along the way. So if anything, it's really taught me how to be a better dad and a better police officer. But you just got to be open-minded to know that this is the world that our children live in. They're going to experiment. They're going to visit things maybe they shouldn't. They're going to try things they shouldn't. How do we react as parents when we find out about that information? So it's learning from both ends.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There are just so many apps and games that kids are connected to, and it's through phones, iPads. How can parents better monitor their child's online activity, like the parent locks, but still balancing, especially for teenagers, monitoring but still being respectful with their privacy?
Right. So it was something that I learned along the way, and we actually put it into use for my son because he wasn't obeying by. He set some ground rules and rules in the house. And you hope that your child obeys the house rules. But then they push it. Next thing you know, for example, be off your phone, and I want you in bed by 10 o'clock. And you go down there, and there they are under the blankets, and they got their cell phone, and it's midnight, and they're still not in bed, right?
Yeah.
So I learned along the way too that there's options, right? There's many different options. You could Google it.
Yeah.
Go on YouTube. I'm sure you'll figure it out between those two things.
Yeah.
What I didn't know originally, and I've learned, is that depending on the type of modem that you have from your internet provider, you can log into that modem and you can set parental, guidelines. So if you want to, 10 o'clock shut down the internet, then they won't have access to the internet while being at home, right? And if you still can't figure that out, then I would just suggest maybe calling your internet provider and then get a hold of tech support, and then they'll probably most likely walk you through it. So those are kind of some pointers that way. It's also important to know, and I wanted to know how you mentioned about how you monitor and respecting privacy. For all the viewers out there that are parents, it's important to know that children under the age of 18 cannot purchase a cell phone. Someone over the age of 18 has to sign for that, and therefore it is not their property. Again, my son, give him cell phone, grade 9, here you go, buddy. Give them a cell phone so they can be in touch with us, and then eventually all the apps and games and the misuse happens. But it's not their property, right? So when it belongs to you, the earlier that we can set those guidelines and those rules with your children, again, I think questions to come, we'll follow up with some of that. But before we leave today, I'll touch on that about different websites and whatnot. But just educate, and knowledge is power, right?
Yeah. So like if a teen has a phone that it's their parents' property, if there's inappropriate pictures or games or something, it's the parent's responsibility that they can get.
Right, so that it is owned by the parent, or the guardian or caregiver, or whatever you want to say. They're responsible for how they misuse that device.
Okay.
But it's also as parents, it's our responsibility to monitor what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's a very slippery slope. There's no real, this is the answer. It's just not, and again, today this isn't the be all end all. It's just, we're going to try to offer some advice and give some tips and some tools for people to become more educated and more switched on and more involved with what's actually happening out there.
And there's so many apps out there. I feel like there's a new app or a new game that comes out every week. How do parents kind of keep up with the trends and understand each of these platforms?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Before I dive into that, about 4 years ago, I spearheaded and started a program it's on our Niagara Police website. It's all about computer and online internet safety, right? So me being one of those fathers who didn't grow up with the technology of the cell phones and the iPads and where the internet is now, really struggled with, how do I deal with this? I don't know how to deal with it. I'm not educated on it. I always say there's that gap, right? Like the students or the youth or the children, the students are here, parents are here. I don't believe we'll ever close that gap, but if we can lessen it, by getting more parents on board and learning more about what's going on, then we'll be better off. So always had parents coming I'd get called to a school, and I'd go to the principal's office, I'd sit down with the student, and the parents would come in, and the teacher principal would tell me exactly what happened. You know, maybe something was posted online, or there was back and forth threats, or they were into an app or a game or challenge or something. And the parents would just be looking at me and going, I don't know what to do. And so many of them would like break down, and they would start crying, and they were frustrated. And I know there's resources out there, but I don't know where to turn. So about 4 years ago, you know, I was only on for about a year, I recognized the problem, and I'm like, I'm one of those parents. Like, I'm one of those, like, here I am being a police officer going into school, trying to help them and give them information. And I felt that I wasn't doing a good enough job to provide that information. So that's where myself and some other police officers came up with this link on our website, where it's all about internet and the law, which explains the law portion side of it, and the consequences. And then there's also the portion for internet for parents, which is huge. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So our Niagara Police website is niagarapolice.ca, and then you would, right on the home page, people can scroll down, and then on the bottom left hand side, you'll see where it says computer and internet safety or online safety. A couple really, like the very first one you're going to get into is cybertip.ca. So a great tool for parents to kind of keep up to speed with what's going on, because we all live very busy lives, trying to parent our children and go for groceries and run a household and whatever, right? So on top of that, you're telling us now I got to kind of re-educate myself on all this kind of stuff. So cybertip.ca allows you to, on their home page, allow you to sign up for email alert. So if there's new challenges or new games or something new that comes out, a new app, that's of a concern. So cybertips.ca is run by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, Canadian-based government agencies based out of Winnipeg. So they come up with cybertip.ca, great website. There's all kinds of information on there. Parents are going to have to do their own groundwork and research for that. But what a great way to be like, get an email and say, hey, I went on it today, and there's a whole thing there on metaverse, which don't even get me. I don't even know where to even start with that. Like, that's out of my league.
Yeah.
But it says what parents need to know about metaverse, and it tells everything that they need to know to give them the tools to kind of be up to speed with it, right? Another excellent website, I love this. It's called smartsocial.com. It's run by a gentleman out of the States. His name's Josh Oakes. He's given us the permission to use his website on our Niagara Police site. But there's a parent app guide on there. Phenomenal. It's just, he talks about every app that exists. He talks about all the games that kids are playing. So, you know, like Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, that kind of thing. And then he talks about all the different challenges. Unfortunately, there's all kinds of different challenges that exist out there in the teen world. So he rates all of them. He'll give you a thumbs up, thumb down. He'll age appropriate. He'll give you a little paragraph to talk about it, the good, the bad, the ugly. There's some videos attached to it. There's a whole website there that talks all about it. So people might not know. I have no idea what that app is. Well, you can go on there and educate yourself about it. So it's really good. And then another one is Common Sense Media, and on there parents can go on and basically take their child's age, lock it in, and then it'll say what's age appropriate for movies, books, video games, apps, all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, good learning tools for sure.
Wow, a lot of great resources out there. A question that we had gotten in earlier. So I know my child is on social media apps, and I fear taking away access will only make them access these platforms secret or behind my back. You kind of talked about that with, being a parent. How can I teach my child to be safe when online?
So here's another opportunity for me to kind of use my history as being a father, and and even talking to some of the classes when I do class presentations as a school resource officer. I think getting involved is as much as you can. And when I say that, I mean, for example, at a younger age, I can see that the hurdle or the obstacles of trying to dive into this with someone who's 16. But at a younger age, if your son or daughter wants to sit down and they want to play a certain game or they want to have access to a certain app, if they're on Snapchat, maybe you're on Snapchat.
Yeah.
So you can monitor that to a certain extent. And then over time, maybe they earn the trust and they earn the freedom of a little bit of mom and dad maybe not monitoring it all the time.
Yeah.
If they're on Instagram, then maybe you're on Instagram. If they're going to sit down and play Minecraft or Roblox, for example, how about we sit down together? I don't mind that you play that game, but how about we sit down together? You're only going to play it from this time to this time, and make your child, if they're old enough, like if they're 10 or 11 or 12 years old, make them do some research and say, hey, get back to me. I want a list of advantages of what's really fun about this game.
Yeah.
But I also want you to kind of go online and kind of research what's concerning about it.
Okay.
Right? So Roblox, for example, we've spoken, I mentioned this before, but Roblox is anonymous players can play that game. And a lot of parents don't know that, but that opens up a door unfortunately, for people who want to gain access to young children.
Wow.
And sometimes your son or daughter may be playing the game and they may only be 8 years old or 10 years old, and they think they're talking to someone who's right around their age, but then, so the influence begins, right?
So another question that was submitted earlier, what happens if it's gone too far? That if it's gone to a point that a youth had already submitted or shared an explicit photo, is there anything that could be done to retract that photo to support, or is it done? There's no turning back.
Right, so great question. I mean, this is something that happens all too often. I'm 47 years old. I'll probably never be able to wrap my head around why people feel the need to maybe, post photos of themselves and send it to other people. It's happening on a daily basis at every school. It's just for whatever reason, it's just kind of gone wild, right? The last thing we want people, especially the youth, especially our kids, the last thing we want them to think is that nothing can be done. Right? Because if they feel nothing can be done, then where does that kind of put them in a mindset, right? They're going to make mistakes and they're going to do things before thinking it through because of their lack of maturity.
Yeah.
So that's where we come in as police officers when we're in the schools, trying to talk about, do presentations and kind of talk to them. When a photo gets taken, inappropriate, explicit, whatever you want to say, also known as a nude, when that gets taken and gets sent, however, or to whoever, the last thing the students, and I've had multiple conversations with students that have done it, right?
Yeah.
So I build that relationship with them, and then they're able to, let's just have a normal conversation. It's about you not getting in trouble. It's about how can I help you, right? So when that photo gets taken, they're not going to go, most likely, I'm not saying they won't, but most likely, statistically or percentage-wise, they're not going to go and tell mom and dad, hey, mom, dad, look what I sent last night. Because why? They're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
They'll get grounded, they might lose their phone, they don't want to deal with the consequences. If they're at school, they're not going to tell the principal, the vice principal, or the teacher because they don't want to get suspended. So they try to deal with it on their own, and because of their age and their lack of maturity and their lack of knowledge, they don't know how to deal with it properly. So it escalates and it snowballs, right? So I'm going to list off a few websites, but I also have a few stories that I'll tell, and I think will be beneficial to our viewers, right? So again, on our niagarapolice.ca website, you go to the computer and online safety portion. needhelpnow.ca is right, like there's cybertip.ca and then there's needhelpnow.ca. The first thing, as soon as you go into that website, phenomenal website, as soon as you go into that website, it's going to ask you right in the top left-hand corner, how can I help you today? And then as soon as you look below it, the first one is, how do I remove an inappropriate photo that I've posted online? So you click on that, and then it's going to want to know what platform you've posted it on. So there's multiple platforms. For example, Snapchat, Instagram, could be Facebook, could be whatever, right? Then at that point, you select what platform. Then it leads into a series of ways on how to break it down. Again, this website is through the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, and there's a 24-hour helpline on needhelpnow.ca. There's an opportunity for them to, if they can't get that photo removed properly, for them to reach out to them, and they will walk them through it on how to do it. So, quick story about that. Pre-COVID, I had a young girl. Before she approached me a week prior, I had done a class presentation at one of the local high schools in Niagara Falls. And she basically approached me and said, hey, Officer Jay, how you doing? I go, hey, what's going on? And, because I always would walk the hallways and just see how their days are going and all that. And she said, well, I just want to let you know that you probably, saved my life last night. And I'm going, oh, okay, well, not knowing where she's going with it, right? And she goes, well, you remember that presentation you did last week, right? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, you know how you were talking about needhelpnow.ca and how you can go on there and it shows you how to remove photos and there's a helpline there and everything else. She goes, well, last night at 3 a.m, she goes, I was getting so much harassment from a photo that I had sent that went from who she thought was her boyfriend, who was no longer a boyfriend, who he sent it to his buddies. And again, not knowing that she's just basically, it's distribution of child pornography, and then they receive it, and now it's possession of child pornography, and it starts to snowball, and she doesn't know what to do. She's not going to go upstairs and tell mom and dad. Again, this isn't the answer to everything, but I gave her, at that point in time, by me doing that presentation, I gave her an opportunity to make a decision. She knew what to do.
Yeah.
She said, if I didn't have that opportunity to go on that website and make that phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning and for them to walk me through it. And then she told me the next day, and then I was able to address it with the other students that received the photo, get the parents involved, and educate everybody. So it ended up working out. It wasn't a bad ending, but for many, it is not a very good ending, right? So Rtea Parsons is one, Amanda Todd's another one, where that happened over years. It's on YouTube. It's out there. But those are stories that people share because they want to help other kids, right? They weren't able to, the parents want to be able to help other kids. They weren't able to help theirs.
Yeah.
It's all an educational thing. We're in this together. No one really teaches us how to be, like I said earlier, how to be parents. We learn along the way. So it's good to be open-minded, right? Another thing that I'd like to touch on about the photo is the don't get sextorted, right? So that's also on there. There's some humor to it. There's a video on our website about it. That's another really big issue.
Yeah.
It's basically extortion, and for anybody that doesn't know what extortion is, it's you do this for me or else I'm going to do this to hurt you type thing, or here's what the consequences are going to be. So for an example, we'll use a girl, for example, in high school, takes a photo of herself, sends it to who she thinks is her boyfriend. Week later, they break up. Boyfriend says, well, you send me more photos or I'm going to send that picture to your parents or the whole school. So now again, not having the maturity or the experience or being educated on what to do and not wanting to get in trouble, off goes the photo, right? So that's extortion with the word sex in front of it. So that happens all too often. And if we're not notified or aware of that, and we want people to reach out and let us know so we can kind of intervene and kind of help. That's also an opportunity for us to kind of maybe the person that's asking for that photo. We're not going to dive in there with youth and just say you've broken the law. We're gonna they're in the Youth Criminal Justice Act. We give them as many opportunities as we can, but everything it's very unique, right? right?
Yeah.
It's not like, in this case, we may have an opportunity to educate, but over here in this case, it may be like, well, we can't, we gotta kind of go because of the severity of it,
Yeah.
right? So it's never just cut and dry. But yeah, so that's kind of the two between needhelpnow.ca and don't get sextorted. I just want everybody to know that you have options and there is support in place. And feel free to give us a call anytime and we'll help you out.
We did get a question submitted online, and you've kind of talked about it a little bit, but it's about cyberbullying, and the question was, what's the best way to protect my daughter against cyberbullying? And it seems to be a common thing for any gender. Cyberbullying seems to be a gateway. Do you guys kind of address that, or how do you?
So again, I've had to address it many times as a school resource officer. We do our best to try to intervene, and we try to get the kids to try to like let us know before it gets too serious, right? That's where it's good to have police come in, get parents involved, speak to the students one-on-one, get everyone who's involved, and try to educate them on what the consequences could be if that type of behavior continues. The last thing as a police service, the last thing we want them to think is that, oh, nothing's gonna get done about it. But a lot of times we're not aware of it, right? Or sometimes people are like, no, they're busy enough. We need to know, right? So something may start out very small and it may just be as simple as a report. But then if the person that got warned that's the aggressor that keeps bullying, then it's good for us to have that documented and on file and gives us an opportunity to get them the help they need. If it continues, as under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, we have the ability and the police have the ability to send, instead of arresting right away, we have the ability to send them off to programs, right? That's a whole nother conversation, but we'll call it program for now. It's under, extrajudicial measures. We send them off to a program and hopefully they get the help they need. The goal is to try to correct the problem before they become an adult, because once they're an adult, they don't get the chances they need. The world that the kids live in, with their phones attached to them, they're always on them, it's going to happen, but it doesn't mean it's okay that it's happening. If it's something that parents and the child in the school can't deal with internally on their own, don't ever hesitate to reach out and call us, and then we intervene, and then we'll do our best to try to correct the problem.
Gotcha. Another question I have is, you talked about the unfortunate situation with the grade 3, but in your previous years, have you ever what's the youngest grade that you've ever gone into just to start the conversation?
I would say grade 3. I would say grade 3. So that same school, and it was just for my own knowledge, I said, I did grade 3, 4, 5 that day, and I want to say, I said, who has a cell phone? Right, just out of curiosity. Me personally, my wife and I were like, my son, you're not getting a cell phone until you hit grade 9. He was the only one in grade 8 that didn't have a cell phone, right? But he's 20 now, so that was like 6 or 7 years ago. So you can see how much it's kind of grown, right?
Yeah.
So I said, by show of hands, what is there in that grade 3, 4, there's 25 kids in the class maybe. I said, by show of hands, who has a cell phone? And half put their hand up in grade 3. So, and then I said, okay, out of the half of you that put your hands up, I said, who has access to data or the internet? And then a third of them put their hand up. But a lot of them did start to, which is kind of interesting to have that conversation at that age with them. They're like, yeah, I can go on this app, but mom's on it. And she says, she knows what I'm doing, and there's parental controls on this app, and it's safe. And so it's good. You start to see parents at that age starting to have that conversation with them. And the earlier you can do it, the better. But again, grade 4, more kids, grade 5, more kids. Grade 6, 7, and 8, I think they all have it. They would all have it now. It's a great tool.
Yeah.
It's the unknown.
Yeah.
It's what's out there that we aren't aware of and that we don't know. right? Again, knowledge is power. Take the time. My easiest thing, and a lot of parents can probably relate to this, my easiest thing was just to say, hey buddy, here's your phone. Oh, you're gonna go play on your games? Yeah, I worked all day, I'm tired, I gotta go get groceries.
Yeah.
You do you, and then yep, I'll just say goodnight, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
But what was he doing during those 4 hours that I wasn't really, I'm not saying you have to be like helicopter parent, where you gotta be right there and monitor everything they're doing. But know the games they're playing, and know that they need to know and be aware that there's rules, and they need to abide by them. And it's hard for a lot of parents because the groundwork's already been set, where they've had the phone for 2 years now. You're gonna come in and lay down these ground rules. They're not gonna wanna take it back.
Yeah.
And there comes a time where you just gotta stand your ground as a parent and say, listen, like, that's my phone.
Yeah.
You're using it, I'm allowing you to have it.
Yeah.
Here's the rules. Maybe sit down with them and say, what do you think the rules should be? And then you build that relationship instead of you just being your rule with an iron fist.
Yeah.
Let them have a say, and then they feel comfortable about, oh yeah, I was able to work out a deal with my parents last night that I can stay up till 10:30 instead of 10. Meanwhile, you were probably okay with 11, but you gave them 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
another question we got online. Do human traffickers use the internet to target children? If so, what ways do they normally go about this, and what tactics should parents be making their children aware of? That's a loaded question.
Yeah, so very good question, but I think for now I'm probably not kind of prepared to answer that, but I would be willing to get back to that person and try to give them some feedback and some information. We have specialty units within the service that are more, diverse at that kind of thing. So I would say it'd probably be best for me to reach out to them or have them reach out. But
Okay. Well, there was so much information, great information out there, and kind of tying everything up, are there any other experiences or important takeaways you would like to share with parents and caregivers?
I think we pretty much covered it. We really could talk about it all day. Like, there's really a lot of moving parts. I just strongly suggest for parents to take the time, visit some of these websites that I mentioned today, check them out, but do your homework. Really take the time to read through them. I mean, again, I mentioned it earlier, like, let's be honest, like, me being a father of a son who recently graduated high school a few years ago, like, and spending 5 years in the high schools and the elementary, like, it's evolving all the time, and it's so difficult. Just be there to support your kids. Be open-minded to change as much as you want them to change, and just really take the time to, be engaged, and, knowledge is power. I wish everybody the best, and hopefully some of the things that I mentioned today are going to be helpful, and people are going to be able to use that in their own personal life. I know there's adults that could use this as well. Right?
Yes. Definitely.
So, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you so much. So we want to thank our viewers for tuning in again. We want to thank Constable Jay for spending time with us to educate us about this very important topic. As a reminder, this presentation will be it has been recorded. It will be uploaded to our Niagara Parents Facebook page and YouTube channel, so please feel free to view it again. And actually tune in next Thursday for a Facebook event on consent and the impacts of social media on students. So this content in that Facebook series will be targeted towards parents and caregivers of elementary school age children. So we want to wish you and your family a safe and happy new school year.